Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm Hamish Allan-Headley. You're listening to Monday Morning Critic.
Perfect. Tell me a little bit about what Bowen Island was like, Hamish.
Oh, wow. Yeah, right on. Jumping right in there. Bowen Island is a beautiful place. It's like stunning, heaven on earth, sort of ruined any other dramatic vista for me for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
It's very rural. When I grew up there, there was like maybe 1,000 people there when I was born. And I grew up in a construction family out there.
Yeah.
I'm a journeyman electrician, and I worked on a framing crew for a long time with my stepfather, and all the fellas that I grew up with sort of are there doing that still, and building beautiful homes and stuff. And now it has since become sort of more of a destination,
Yeah.
I hesitate to use the word gentrification, but it's definitely gone through some demographic shifts and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's a stunning place, man, like really beautiful. And it was just a really wonderful place to be a kid, we didn't have, like, my house didn't have keys. It didn't have a lock, and
Wow.
you just go out into the woods with your friends, and there's no natural predators there. There's no bears like the rest of British Columbia. There's none of that stuff. So it was just like a really magical place to be a kid. And, close enough to Vancouver that you were able to go into this sort of hub, this big city or small city, I guess, but
almost like a time gone by. Because I didn't grow up in that situation, but very similar. Where you didn't have to lock the doors. You're out playing until the street lights came on. All that fun stuff.
Where are you from?
I'm from Massachusetts, little Western Massachusetts. So
yeah, right on.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying. I
did a play out in Lennox one time.
Oh, that's the Berkshires. Yeah, that's about 40 minutes away. Wow.
Beautiful country, man. Beautiful country. I loved it.
Yeah, especially during the fall, the leaves are stunning,
Oh, man, yeah. It was gorgeous. Lots of art, too. My God.
Yeah.
All that stuff there. It was really cool.
A lot of my actor guests do a lot of theater in the Berkshires. So it is known for that. You mentioned electrician. I know in the States that when people have become an electrician, it's as much schooling as almost like a doctor. Like it's like 4 years of this and an apprenticeship so it's like being an electrician. I have to imagine that's a lot of time invested, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was like 5 years, I guess,
Wow.
and you work and go to school. And I was as I said, I was a framing carpenter before that. Well, framing carpenter's helper. I was working on framing crews before that. And if you've ever been to the West Coast, in the Pacific Northwest, it rains a lot,
Yeah.
So I was like, how do I get dry? So the electrician comes after the roof is on. So I started doing that, but I didn't realize how much mathematics would be involved. It's like literally rocket science and rotating vectors. So I was real buckle down time when it came to the schooling, But,
this is no joke. I'm trying to install a Ring doorbell, and you have to take the other doorbell off and then attach the wires to it. Yeah. I almost electrocuted myself on a low voltage. So that's what you're dealing with me. Yeah. You're much more capable than I am. So yeah, it's no joke. You mentioned your theater work, right? So I'm trying to track the places you've done theater, right? So Indiana, UK, New York. You mentioned Lennox in Russia. Am I missing anything?
Yeah, I did a Lyle Kessler play that I was really proud to be a part of down in Florida one time. And Lyle Kessler wrote a really famous play called Orphans.
Yeah.
And we did the world premiere of a play of his called House on Fire. And it was a monster of a play. And Lyle was there with us doing rewrites and stuff and really engaged in the process. And I think like it was one of those kind of plays where after every night you're better than you were at the start of the play.
Right.
You're a better actor coming out of something like that. It was like a wonderful experience. And that was at Palm Beach Drama Works, I think.
Yeah. How long did you spend in Russia?
I was there we were there for like 3 months or something. Yeah. Yeah. Not a super, not a huge amount of time, but definitely enough, and that was like pretty pivotal for me. To go over there, and we were studying and doing plays and stuff, and I, as like sort of the birthplace of contemporary American acting styles, is the group theater, which was just an offshoot of Stanislavski training and all that sort of stuff. So I had trained in New York City before that, at a place called the Neighborhood Playhouse, which is a Meisner conservatory, and that was all very steeped in that tradition as well. So the theater history was something that they talked about a lot, and I went over there to this school called the Boris Shukin Theater Institute, which is a Vakhtangoff school. Vakhtangoff was contemporary to Stanislavski, and this was the third studio of the Moscow Art Theater. And they splintered on a few ideas, but they're basically sort of very similar things. And I sort of expected that I would go over there and they would give me the trick. They'd give me the magic pill that would make me the most super talented, best actor in the whole universe. And I got over there and they were like, here's the things that here's the steps that you take, and it's about hard work and dedication. And they would start every class by saying, I can't teach your talent, and what you have is what you have, but I can give you some tools that will help to uncover it. And
good advice.
And so that was where I felt like I'd climbed to the top of the mountain, and I knew that now it was just up to me, and the only thing that was sort of standing in my way was sort of my own laziness or whatever.
Yeah. You know who credits Russia as well, and he's very similar to you in a lot of ways, I think, is John Bernthal. He trained in Russia too, and he trains a lot. He attributes a lot of what he is today to what he learned in Russia. I mean, I don't know the similarities between the two of you as far as what you learned, specifically, but he credits Russia for going to Russia, learning as a big part of who he is today.
Yeah. Well, that's very kind of you to include my name in the same sentence as John Bernthal. It's very appreciated, but it's definitely, man. I mean, I think also part of it was, and I don't know if it's similar for him, but there was just always this mystique surrounding Stanislavski and his work, and to go to the horse's mouth, to go to the source and say, really, what's going on here? And they give you this list of questions. It's basically like scientific thought applied to storytelling. You just break it down in little chunks like that, and that's sort of what it is. But the most useful thing that I think I learned there was they have this list of questions, that you ask yourself about your character and all these things and the scenes you're doing and how you break it down. And they said that the most important one is the ellipses at the end, where you put your own authenticness in there, right? So it's about drawing out your authenticity. Yeah. So it was cool, man. It was an amazing thing. And just being around their devotion to the craft, and like they work so hard, and the way that they would do plays for years, like I saw a production of Romeo and Juliet that had been on for 3 years. It was probably one of the best things I've ever seen in my life, just because they were so in it,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And, before we hop into, the wonderful filmography you have, Mayor of Kingstown, I did want to ask you, right? So you and I are roughly in the same ballpark as far as generation. Growing up as a kid, 80s kid, is there a movie or an actor that you're just in love with? Because, the roots with you were planted early, right? We know your skill level. We know like what you've done semi-recently. It's a lot. But like what seed was planted that really, whether it's a movie, actor, maybe TV show, what is something along those lines, Hamish, that really fueled your fire?
Well, I always loved like Harrison Ford movies, when I was a little kid and stuff. I mean, the guy was unbelievable. He always had a way of sort of like taking over the scene while simultaneously looking like he didn't want to be there. Like Witness is just like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I think film, so that was some stuff. But when I was 8 years old, my old man took me to see Lawrence of Arabia in the movie theater.
Classic.
And it was. I don't think that I was like obviously that film is just quite problematic in some respects, but then in other respects is like completely genius and brilliant, right? And I don't think I realized what I was looking at, but the expanse of it, it's the 70 millimeter shots and all that stuff. And I think like stuck with me. And I was like that I've sort of been chasing being part of something as that for sort of the rest of my life, Yeah. And then when I got to New York, a lot of that shifted because I was more exposed to guys like Philip Seymour Hoffman and stuff. Like when I got out of school, I saw him do Death of a Salesman, and I must have gone to that place 6 times because I just kept going back, and then it became sort of more about that and learning about these guys like him and Wendell Pierce and dudes like that can do theater and films and all of that in that medium.
Yeah, one of the best ever Seymour Hoffman
ever. Yeah, no doubt, man. And his stage work, for those people that hadn't had the opportunity to witness something like that, was equally brilliant. It was just effervescent, right?
And I think people who don't watch movies or understand acting, his passing was like if Michael Jordan were to, like, that's how good he is at his craft, comparable to what Jordan was to basketball. It's close. It's close.
100%, man. And I mean, in New York, like, one of the things that I just love so much about that place is that there's like a true pedagogy,
Yeah.
And so he was a pillar of the community with the Labyrinth Theater Company and all of these things. And there's a lot of guys like, his partner, John Ortiz, and stuff like that, guys that still carry that torch. And so for that reason, his loss was massive. Like, it reverberated, for sure, as you say.
Yeah. Well said. And I have to say, in a time now, we're kind of spoiled, right? Because my wife and I, we love Paramount. We love Paramount Plus. Like, we look at, like, we have a routine, right? We watch. We'll do Mayor of Kingstown. We have a Tulsa King. We have Yellowstone. We have 1883. We have Showtime, Your Honor, because they're related networks. So we have these like 4 or 5 awesome shows. Like, it's like great, and it's so good. I almost feel like after we're done watching them, there's nothing. Like, it's like not on Paramount, like on other networks. Like, it's like I'm paying over $100. Like, after we're done with Paramount, it's like it's the shows are so good.
Oh yeah.
Everything else is kind of a letdown. I'm not saying all networks are bad, but it's kind of true. Like, we watch these epic stories, and then it's like, well,
yeah.
It's
amazing, man. I mean, and especially like specifically in Taylor's universe, right? It's just like creating these epic stories and the diversity of it, like the varying types of stories. Like, Kingstown is obviously a very, very different sort of world and flavor than the thing you're going to get in all of the Yellowstone iterations.
Sure,
it's cool. There's something sort of there for everyone, right?
Yeah, and I get an email just before we had our interview, and Paramount is lowering the price per month. Everybody else is jacking it up and giving less content. Wow. Paramount is giving more content and charging less. So that's, I mean, it's easily my favorite streaming network, easily by a mile and a half.
Yeah.
Your character Robert Sawyer. You mentioned part of the method you were learning, right? One of the things is you create. What's that called? Where you create your own character? That you just mentioned it. You just talked about the method. What's the last part of that method?
Like a Stanislavski method.
Yeah. What's the last step you mentioned? What's it called? Where you create your.
Oh man.
How did you say it?
Like where you sort of create your own sort of backstory and stuff like that?
Yes. So did you do that with Robert Sawyer?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like that's part of the job that you just you want to know where this guy, what he eats for breakfast and where he went to school and blah 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 and all that stuff. But also, it's super fun. You know what I mean? You're just sort of creating this other alter ego for yourself.
Yeah.
This other thing that sort of is an extrapolation of your own humanity, which is like. Was super fun to do, right? And I think I heard an interview once with John C. Reilly where he said film acting is about knowing that you're the man for the job,
right?
And in order to do that, you have to feel like you know this person better than most anybody, right?
Right. So I feel like the audience looking in, we know a couple things. We know he's a badass. We know that Taylor loves characters similar to this, right? Benicio del Toro and Sicario is very similar. You guys do it each in your own way differently, right? We know that he has a son because in episode 3 of season 1, he checks in on his son, right? We know that that's his child. So we also know there's probably a war background, Afghanistan background. So we know snippets. What, I mean, I know you can't say anything, but like, what would you, and when you create a character like this, what's something you think about to develop him, right? Because he's a deep guy. Like there's a lot that we don't know, but we know he's a badass. We know those other 2 things.
Yeah.
Like, what goes through your mind as you're creating this wonderful character?
Well, I think it's just about like sort of following the breadcrumbs. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it. Unfortunately, to answer your question, like it's sort of different every time.
Right.
what's really wonderful about working with like a Taylor Sheridan script is that it's in there somewhere. You know, like you say, even though that scene where I check in on my son is small, you know, it's just a very tiny little thing that Taylor put in there. That's all that an actor needs.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that's
a great point.
Like, oh, I've got my motivation now. Boom, thank you very much. And then I can extrapolate from there, and I can do whatever I need to do. And the other, I mean, this is like a massive sort of thing to say, but the other, when we were working in Russia, we were working with Chekhov scripts,
right?
And Chekhov was a doctor, and so his scripts are really thoroughly well thought out. Every character. The answer for your question is in that text somewhere. Right?
Gotcha.
You just got to scour. Gotcha. And similarly, in that I've been finding working with Taylor's work, you know, in season 1 there, like everything that I needed to know about this guy was in there somewhere, whether it was like a little stage direction or this or that.
Right,
you know, if I just looked hard enough, I would find it.
Yeah, and you know, the cast, it's amazing how Taylor uses the same cast over and over again, right? Because a very underrated actor is James Jordan, who's been in, you know, Wind River and Yellowstone. And he is such he's an actor that might not get mentioned in, you know, your everyday conversation, but my God, can he act?
Like, he's fantastic, man. He's fantastic. And like, such a good dude. Like it was just like running into him, you know, I don't think we had any scenes together, but I would run into him every once in a while. And it was just there was an actor who loves being on set and loves acting, and I think that sort of thing is what comes through on screen for him. You know, he's just tenaciously, you know, going after it and filled with such joy while he's doing it that it makes it really exciting to watch him. Right?
Yeah, I loved him in Wind River, the end scene where him and Jeremy. That is a scene I could rewatch probably 5,000 times. Like. Man. That is great.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite films, like hands down. Like, and you know, when the opportunity to audition for this and then the opportunity to be a part of it came around, I was just, you know, I was absolutely dumbstruck because here was the guy who had completely made that film, you know, and all these actors started popping up, you know, that had been in that thing and been with them since the beginning. It was really cool.
Yeah, and you know, I met Jeremy in Seattle, and he, I had a poster behind me, but I keep rotating posters. But maybe one of the nicest people I've ever met, and I'm so happy he's on the road to recovery. Like, I'm so happy for
Absolutely,
him.
Man.
You know, good human being. Mm-hmm. You know, why do you think it is that Taylor does use the same cast? Is it that he can trust people? Is it that he's comfortable with what he sees? What do you think it is? If you had to guess.
Well, I mean, like when, you know, I mean, I think, yes, all those things, like, you know, when we were building houses with, you know, my stepfather, right? If you got a guy who does a good roof, you know, why would you hire somebody else? You know what I mean? Like, and that's sort of, I think, you know, maybe, I don't know, I haven't asked him about it, but I imagine that's part of it. And then another part of it too, is that like, what's so special about, Taylor and his crew is that they all came up together, man. And like there's such a bond there, you know, and they're all friends for years, you know, like him and Hugh go way back, and like Rob Kirkland and, you know, and all those guys, you know, they've known each other in LA for a really long time, and they enjoy working together, and they know that they make a good product and good art together. So, you know, you're like a family. It's amazing.
Yeah, I had a Yellowstone actor on. He was telling a story about Taylor, and he said he was on Sons of Anarchy, and this is a story that's been told before, but he was on Sons of Anarchy, and they gave everybody on the set pretty much a raise except him. He's like, well, why am I not getting a raise? Like, and he just quit because, make a long story short, because he was furious. Yeah. Well, now you're starting to see what happens when you make a talented man, when you doubt his ability, and it's all over the place, and it's all like watched by millions. So. Yeah. What's the moral of the story? Don't piss off Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I mean, I've never been around anybody like that, you know, who's like that clear in their vision and like sort of expanding at that rate. Like we would get on set and he would be like, okay, we're going to shoot it like this, and then we're going to shoot it like that, and then we're going to shoot it like that, and then we're going to go inside and we're going to shoot there, and then we're all going to go home. And that's what we did, man. And feeling like that clarity of vision, combined with his like immediacy of action was really comforting. You felt just like super supported, You know, like, okay, I can do my job because this guy's got everything else sorted out. And if he says it's good, it's good. So
yeah. Yellowstone, he's on camera. Do you foresee him being on camera in Mayor of Kingstown?
Oh, I don't know, man. I mean, he seems like a pretty busy guy. It'd be great if he was, but
How does he do that? Because I have to tell you, like, even from a small rinky-dink podcast like me, where I really work my ass off, like researching for guests, and there's all this other work. How does he have time to do all this stuff at such a high level and not get burnt out? I mean,
it's like amazing. Like when I first met him and I saw him doing his thing, I was like, what does that guy eat for breakfast? You know, that's unbelievable. Look at him go. You know, I've like I said, I've never been around anybody like that in my life.
Well, you got two Avengers on set. You got Jeremy and then you got Taylor. I mean, they're both superhuman. They're both superhuman. Yeah, you know,
superheroes. Yeah.
And you know your show is good when you have actors that never do TV. Harrison Ford, who you mentioned earlier, Kevin Costner, all these actors, Stallone, they come up. So that has to scream that this guy. I mean, not to harp on Taylor much longer, but that it has to scream volumes about this man's work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody. You know, I mean, yeah. I mean, I was watching. In 1923 the other night and Harrison Ford gave this monologue that was just incredible, you know, and he did it in such a way, you know, that was just perfect, right? But Taylor gave him the words to do that, you know, and you know, not to take anything away from, you know, a legend, but it's like, who doesn't want to be a part of that, you know? And I think also like what I was saying before, a lot of the film actors and TV guys that I've been talking to on our set that have been there for a long time, there's just a comfort in knowing that if Taylor says that it's good, then it's, you know, it's going to be good, right? When he says, okay, we're moving on, you're not like, oh shit, did I get it right or whatever? You know, you're like, yes, perfect.
Yeah, he's happy, you're happy. Yeah, I get it. What part of Robert do you share as far as, you know, the character to you in real life? What do you share any common qualities?
Well, I think we kind of look similar, and that's sort of.
I set myself up for that one. Yeah, you guys are right. It's strange how much you guys look alike. You know.
There's, I mean, there. You know, I knew people growing up in my life that were close to me that were a lot like Robert, and without the violence. You know, but the way that I see Robert is that he is sort of like a very talented person who lives in his zone of genius. You know, he's always he lives in this place where he's able to like flow with immediate action, and so I don't know, so I try to emulate that. You know, he doesn't make a wrong decision from his point of view. He's just like, that is what we do now, you know.
Yeah, and the casting's perfect. You're perfect in what you're doing, and you know, the fact that Diane Wiest is doing this. I mean, she's a 2-time Academy. I knew she won 1. I didn't know she won 2. Yeah. Like, this is insane that all these like top actors are all in. Like, she won 2 Academy Awards. Do you know how enormous that? I mean, you know how it is, but those listening, you know, I mean, that's incredible. She's an incredible background. Jesus.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's amazing, man. I mean, it's just such a like. I just feel I'm so grateful. I feel so blessed, you know, just to be. This was the ambition, you know, like always to be part of a top tier creative project like this one, you know. And when I get there from everybody who's working on it in a holistic sense, you know, in front and behind the camera and all that stuff, it's just top tier all around, and it's just an amazing thing to be a part of, you know. And when I watch the episodes, I'm like, oh my god, it just looks so fantastic, you know.
Yeah,
you know, it makes us really proud.
Yeah, a couple more questions, man. Thank you so much for all this time. I really appreciate it. Let me ask you this: does Robert break the law, enforcing the law? You think?
I mean, I think that Robert. It sort of depends on what law you're talking about, you know. Yeah, that's the way that I feel about it with him. He does what he thinks is right.
Right.
Always.
And his actions, he wants to de-escalate things. He wants things like it stops with him, right? Is that a fair way of looking at it?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The buck stops with him. And I think that, going back to what I said before about him being a very capable person, he recognizes always that he's the man for the job. You never see him stepping in to do somebody else's work. He's not trying to do what Mike does. He just does. He knows where his talents are useful, and he goes to that, and he knows that he is the man for the job to do it better than anybody else. And so everybody else should get out of the way because we want this to be done right. He's very result-oriented person.
Yeah. It's the only job I think I would not want on that show. Well, prison guard is a ridiculously tough job. I could never do it. Yeah. But Mike's job is insanely I mean, my God, for those that are up on the show, I feel like he's going to need Robert very, very soon here because things are barely holding together right now. And we're at a point of the show where it's like, it's pretty tense.
Yeah, it's super exciting, man. It's exciting, even though, I've read the scripts, it's really exciting to watch. The whole thing sort of barely hold together, and sort of, it's like you're expecting it to fall apart at any moment, hoping that it's not going to. It's like the perfect sort of balance for something that's very enticing to watch, right?
Yeah. Is there a temptation when you're around Jeremy or maybe Diane or whomever, you got a lot of veteran actors, to pick their brain? I mean, you have a lot of background training, a lot of training, but the smart people are the one we talked about. James earlier, loves being on set, loves picking people, learning. Are you like that as well? Are you guys always wants to learn, picks people's brain?
I mean, it's again, I don't know how I got so lucky. It's crazy. And when I go, and a lot of my scenes are with Jeremy, and it's a masterclass every time, and not just him, but, I get to work with you and Taylor Handley and Derek Webster and all these incredible film actors that and every day I'm watching them, and learning from them, it's amazing, man.
Yeah. So I have to tell you, and I'm always evolving too. And one of I've learned to really love Reddit. I feel like they have the most. It can be toxic like any social media, but it can be the most knowledgeable movie fans and television fans I've ever heard. So I want to read you a few. There was a Robert Sawyer appreciation post. I want to read you a few of the comments. We're going to end the interview with this. One person said he looks like a young De Niro.
That's nice.
That's really nice. One person said fire as hell. I'm guessing that's a good thing. One person compares you to Colin Farrell.
Oh, no kidding. That's nice too.
And the other person said he'd make a great Punisher. And I agree with all of those things, even fire as hell. So, I mean, when you have people appreciating a character like this, I think that's a great thing. I think people love your work.
Oh, that's really kind of you to say. Thank you. When you're working, like I said, with people of this caliber, you're so well supported. The script is good. The filming looks incredible, everything, so you just got to show up kind of, and so I feel like that stuff is happening to me, rather than being a product or the driver of it,
Yeah. Last thing. Is there an actor's trajectory that you want to emulate? Right. It sounds like you're doing pretty good on your own, but is there, when you stand back and you watch another movie as a fan, another show as a fan, is there a trajectory of an actor that you like?
Oh yeah, I mentioned like Wendell Pierce before. There's an actor that I just saw him in Death of a Salesman on Broadway. He's amazing. Oscar Isaac is another guy that I look at all the time. I mean, John Bernthal. You mentioned him. He's like a big one for me. He brings his cameo in The Bear. I think he's the only person in the world that could have done that. That just brought this sort of humanity and groundedness to it, and so it's guys like that, that I really, really look up to, and man, you're super talented, and I really hope you come back. Man, I'm a big fan, and I love your work. And every time you come on screen, I pump my fist. You're just very enjoyable to watch, and you could tell you've been working at your craft for a long, long time, and just know that it's appreciated. And I really thank you for this time. That's kind of you, Derek. I really appreciate it, man. And I just want to say, you're such a wonderful interview. I've been listening to a lot of your stuff, and you have such a wonderful way of getting people to sort of open up and feel comfortable and reveal wonderful parts of themselves. So thank you.
That's very sweet of you. Thank you so much. I hope you come back on down the road. Take care, my friend.
Take care.